Welcome to WMCM Sports Talk Live. This is your host, Kyle Popper. We're going to be talking about March Madness, NBA playoffs, and much more. So stay tuned. Sports Talk Live will be right back. Again, welcome back to WMCM Sports Talk Live, where we are going to start our conversations with March Madness. Let's go ahead and get into upsets. What did you guys take away from the beginning of March Madness, and what were things you weren't quite expecting? We'll start with Murphy.
For me, the team is Gonzaga. They went and beat Seton Hall, who won the Big East tournament, and then beat Utah, a very good team from the Pac-12. But Gonzaga, has three-headed monster. Domantas Sabonis, the big man, Kyle Wiltshire, and a kid named Eric McClellan all scored 17-plus in their win over Utah. A team that they just about were the last team into the tournament coming out of the Mountain West. But Gonzaga, now they match up with Syracuse in the Sweet 16, a 10 seed, and they'll get a chance to go to the Final Four, I think.
All right.
I mean, in general, I would just say the whole tournament's been awesome. Seeing so many upsets. I think in the first 2 days, there was more lower-seeded teams than there were higher-seeded teams winning. So, I mean, if you're a fan of the big teams, that's obviously not good for you. But in general, just watching Northern Iowa pull off that last-second, heave that went in, and then also seeing them just completely just kill themselves in the final 40 seconds. Both were very enjoyable at those fans' expense. So I enjoyed it being a bystander, but just in general, the whole tournament's been awesome.
For me, I don't really like a lot of upsets. I mean, I love me a couple of upsets, but when you get Syracuse, a team that a lot of people thought that shouldn't even be in the tournament at all, versus Middle Tennessee State, and now they're in the Sweet 16, that's a bummer for me. And then a lot of these upsets, it comes with a lot of blowouts in the second round, too. So I was just kind of bummed with all the upsets, to be honest. I mean, I like a couple, but like with most of the lower seeds winning, I was just, kind of bummed for the second round.
Yeah, my bracket was kind of messed up from the beginning. I had Michigan State going all the way, and that didn't go as planned. I can say that right now. That was just a right-away loss to Middle Tennessee, and kind of disappointed on that. Had $10 on this bracket, so I'm out of that. Yeah, it was pretty rough. Who do you guys have?
I think that 4 or 5 matchup between Indiana and Kentucky, that was kind of screwed both those teams because they're both very talented teams and they had to match up in the second round. But a team like Indiana, I could see them going far. Another team that I think that's left is A&M. They're a very good basketball team. Obviously, their big comeback against Northern Iowa, but A&M gives themselves a great chance at making a Final Four.
Yeah, I mean, this was the first year where I actually didn't put money in on any of the brackets, and thank God, because it might be the worst bracket that anyone's ever filled out. On ESPN, I'm in the 9th percentile right now, and if you didn't know, that is absolutely horrible. So I think I got almost every game wrong in the first 2 days, so good thing I didn't lose money. But.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I mean, Murphy said A&M, but I think they're going to have a really tough time beating Oklahoma. I like Buddy Hield. He's putting up monster numbers game after game. And he's been really clutch. But, I mean, Texas A&M, they got the big guy, and that House. House is a very good player. Yeah, Damwell House. He's a really good player, too. So, I mean, them and Kansas. Can Kansas beat them in the Final Four? Sure. It's really tough to beat a team 3 times. I've known it playing basketball my whole life. It's really hard to go in and beat a team that third time.
It's going to be fun to watch this next weekend.
Oh, yeah. It's going to get very intense. Do you think A&M can go ahead and beat Oklahoma and move in to the Elite Eight?
I think they can. It's going to be really tough with Buddy Hield, Isaiah Cousins, and Woodard, and also, what's the guy's? Big guy, starts with an S.
Steven.
Yeah. No, yeah. Oh, well. They got another really good guy who plays for them. So they got that, like, three-headed backcourt, which was probably the best backcourt in the country besides maybe Tyler Ulis and Jamal Murray. So
the thing with that game is, I mean, neither team has really been blowing anyone out or looking great. I mean, Oklahoma played a couple close ones, as well as A&M, basically almost lost that one game. So.
Yep. And so as we talk about upsets, we can move on to quite an upset is Wisconsin over Xavier. I don't know about you guys, but when I got back to the dorms, the place erupted after the game winner. You guys want to touch on that?
I mean, just an incredible shot by Bronson Koenig. He pulled up from 3, to tie it right before that, and I think while it was in the air, all Wisconsin fans were, pretty mad that he even shot that. But he ends up being the hero, scoring the last 6 points and putting it in. So good for him. Kind of a lucky win, but at the same time, the Badgers really grinded it out in the second half to pull within that 6-point deficit they had going in. So.
Anybody else want to touch on the Wisconsin win? Or?
For Wisconsin, I had them actually beating Xavier every bracket I made because I know Xavier always just completely loses it, chokes every time they are in the tournament. I also had Villanova losing in the second round too. They always choke too. They've surprised me with their win. But so I think Wisconsin's going to go ahead here and beat Notre Dame because I don't think Notre Dame's that great. But then they're going to go play either the winner of UNC and Indiana, and they're going to get absolutely manhandled because they just don't have the firepower to keep up with them. Great job by Bronson Koenig with both those shots, especially the Steph Curry fade back, hit the corner three, fall into your bench. That was amazing. But, Wisconsin, I think their run's just about done here.
Yeah, I mean, it is going to be tough to not only get past Notre Dame, but when you do get into the winner against North Carolina or even Indiana, it's going to be really hard to move from that Elite Eight position to the Final Four. Yeah. And as I touch on the Final Four, let's go ahead and talk about what we expect from the Final Four and maybe just your overall predictions on who could possibly win it all.
All right, I'll start. My predictions for the Final Four, I think Villanova comes out of that South region. I think they're going to beat Kansas or Maryland, the winner of that game. Midwest, with Michigan State losing, that kind of opened it up for a team like Iowa State, who has struggled in the tournament the last couple of years, but I think that Iowa State can get in there this year. In the East, North Carolina, I don't see anybody giving them troubles. And finally, Duke out of the West, Duke the national champion from last year.
All right.
For my Final Four, I actually have Iowa State, Miami, Oklahoma, and UNC. I think Oklahoma's going to take out Oregon or Duke, whoever wins that matchup. I think Duke's going to take that one. I think Oregon isn't ready for Pac-12 after playing in the Pac-12, which was nobody. And then I think Maryland and Indiana could shock some people by squeaking in, but Maryland beating Kansas, that seems tough when they've played garbage the whole second half of the season here. And also Indiana, they've been playing very well, but UNC, that just looks like a really tough matchup with Bryce Johnson pulling 20 and 10 every game he plays, it seems.
Yeah, I'll piggyback on the Indiana thing, definitely. Another team that's really kind of a sleeper would be Gonzaga. I mean, they knocked off a team already with an upset, and they were really kind of lower seeded than they should have been at an 11. So they've got some veteran leadership. You've got a guy that's already won a national championship at Kentucky with Wiltshire, I think is how you say his name. So, I mean, they're pretty deep as well, good bench, a couple good big guys. So I wouldn't be surprised if them or Indiana really make it to the Final Four.
All right, and then moving past the Final Four, we've seen a lot of upsets lately. Do you think it could kind of go back to just the usual cliche of, the better teams winning and we could see a Kansas UNC national championship, or do you think there is going to be that upset shocker team that does make not only the Final Four but the national championship?
I really think it's just going to be the better team winning the game. I think Oklahoma's going to take Kansas out, though. I think they're going to prove to be the better team with their backcourt play, because the guard play, that's what plays, that's what wins games in the tournament. It's been proven over the years. So, I mean, I think Oklahoma will win that, and I think they will play either UNC or Iowa State. UNC, I think, will dominate Iowa State in that Final Four matchup, and I think Oklahoma's going to take it all, to be honest. I think Buddy Hield is going to play clutch, get his 30 points every night, and just win it all for him.
All right, there's a shocker. Any of you guys got shockers?
For me, I think North Carolina will win the championship. I kind of said that at the beginning, and I'm sticking with that. I think Marcus Page, he's had a pretty lackluster career overall with injuries nagging him down, but I think that he gets North Carolina over that hump and wins the national championship.
Yeah, I mean, we always see the lower seeded teams kind of knock off a few big guys, especially in this tournament. But I mean, really when it comes down to it at the end, you always see the big the Goliaths in college basketball making it. So, I mean, even last year you had Kentucky in the Final Four, and while Wisconsin was really high seeded, they really weren't what you would think of as like a Kentucky or North Carolina. But so I think this year will be the same thing, just repeated. It'll be, the big names, the one seeds like Kansas, UNC, stuff like that. So I really wouldn't see any shockers in terms of, anyone lower than like a 5 seed making it, unless you want to talk maybe Indiana. But
speaking of a 5 seed, I think if Maryland plays their whole potential, they could really take it. They got Diamond Stone. If he just decides to want the ball and just be a beast for once, like he did in can't remember who they played, but he scored 32 points in the second half. I was watching it, and he just dominated the entire game. If Rashid Suleiman wants to make his 3-pointers and Melo Trimble wants to get to the free throw line 14 times a game like he was doing his freshman year, then I think they could really just show the world and be one of the best teams in the country, which they were rated earlier in the year.
They were one for 18 from 3 against Hawaii.
Were they?
One for
Ouch.
18.
Yeah, I was just going to say they're a real streaky team, especially
Yes.
when Melo Trimble has an off night. It's really not good news for them, and they kind of just rely on him to get at least like 15 a game. So, I mean, if he doesn't step up, then are you really going to count on Diamond Stone, the freshman, to get you 20 points and 10 rebounds? I wouldn't. So.
Yeah, but they also have the Carter Jr. kid who can put up 20 and 10 also, and Jake Layman. Jake Layman, also another big guy, 6'9", 6'10", like kind of an all-around college player, small forward. So he's good, but I think they just haven't been playing to their potential. If they do, they could, but I don't see it happening. But they could make some noise.
One of the most talented teams.
For sure, for sure.
Yeah, everybody loves an underdog story, but I think we can agree that, as Cal was saying, that when it comes down to it, it's going to be the Goliaths. It's going to be the better team. So I think that's what we're all expecting. That's what we expect you fans to expect. So we're going to go to break right now, and we're going to check out the perfect bets, but when we come back, we're going to be talking some NBA playoffs.
I'm Queen. I'm 2 years old, super sweet, and very outgoing. One of my favorite hobbies is snuggling.
Hi, I'm Tiger. I'm an 8-month-old goofball of a kitten. I love having plenty of toys to play with and a fellow kitty to keep me company.
Hi, I'm Maxwell. I'm calm and cool. I'm just looking for someone to give me some love.
Hi, I'm Kendra. I'm 2 years old. I love conversation. I'm shy at first, but I'm also very curious and friendly.
To find out more about adoption for these pets or others, contact the Cooley Region Humane Society at 781-4014.
Again, that number is 781-4014 for Perfect Pets. All right, so now coming back, we're going to transition from the college game to the professional game, and we're going to talk some NBA playoff preview. With, around 15 games left, we're going to start seeing, some, battle to the finish once we, get down to these teams that are really starting to claw at the final playoff spots. We look at the Eastern Conference, and there are a lot of teams, very close to making it and not making it. So we're going to stay on the Eastern Conference, and we're going to talk about, do the Heat pose a threat to the Cleveland Cavaliers?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes, they do.
I know you're excited to talk about this.
If Chris Bosh comes back healthy from his injuries, blood clot injuries, which he's really trying to do, and really everybody says he is, then I think they can pose a threat. They got Josh Richardson, their second-round pick this year. He's coming in March. He's averaging 12.6 points per game off the bench and shooting 50% from three, which is huge for them. And in the last 8 games, he's actually shooting 73% from three. Joe Johnson, they brought him in from the Nets, and he's bringing huge three-point shooting for them too. He's like 18 of 30 on three-point shots this in March as well. And what is it? Heat are the first in three-point shooting also this year, or this in March, with 45% shooting. That's up from the worst in the league. They were at 30-some%. They were the worst in the league, and then Joe Johnson and Josh Richardson come in and just completely up their three-point percentage. Yeah, it'll drop a little bit, but if Chris Bosh comes back, it'll also add more spacing for them. They've won 11 straight games versus the Cavaliers in Miami. So if that could help them as well if Cavaliers can't go in and beat them in Miami.
Mm-hmm. I mean, when you bring up these names, we were talking about this before, this team is really a team of veterans. And, it's really rare to see this in a playoff-bound team where it's just these veterans. I mean, you mentioned their second-round pick, but besides that, you have the veterans like Luol Deng, who they've moved from the small forward spot to the power forward spot. You're going to have veterans like Amari Stoudemire making a comeback, but I mean, it'll be really, really interesting to see if they really do pose a threat. I think it's the Raptors, but we're going to move over to the Western Conference real quick, and we're going to talk about the Spurs. Can the Spurs beat the Golden State Warriors in 7?
I would say yes.
Yes?
It wouldn't surprise me. I also have a very lacking amount of NBA knowledge, but every time I watch highlights on ESPN, it's always Steph Curry putting in threes. It's basically Draymond Green mouthing off. That's all you see. But quietly this whole season, the Spurs have been keeping a pretty close pace with their record. Obviously, they're not in line to really set the record for the Bulls, but I mean, they're a very consistent team. LaMarcus Aldridge has fit in perfectly. I mean, they really just showed up this whole year, and as we saw last week, they can beat them.
I don't think that's why they play 7. I don't think they can beat them 4 out of 7 games, especially with the old guys that the Spurs have. I just don't see their ability to match up with the much younger Warriors in a 7-game series. Maybe 1-game series at home, they win it. As we saw this weekend, Tim Duncan playing just 8 minutes in that one. But I think Golden State has a dynasty here. I think they win a couple more titles.
Yeah, I think it'll be really close. I mean, they've only played each other twice. They're going to have 2 more games down the stretch in the final 12 games. But, I mean, coming up on that, you mentioned the last game, Andre Iguodala only had 8 minutes logged in. The game before that, Tim Duncan didn't even play, and that just speaks about their depth for both teams coming off the bench. So, I mean, they really do pose a threat. I don't think there's any other team in the West that can really top those two, so I do expect that to be the Western Conference Finals, and one of those teams are going to advance. But if I had to put money on it, I am going to say the Warriors. They are probably the more powerful, youngest, and deeper teams in all of NBA, not only the Western Conference.
I actually got the Spurs in 7.
Spurs in 7?
Yeah,
okay,
I like
so we got 2
in
Spurs,
7.
2 Warriors. I like that.
I think they're going to do it.
Yeah. All right. And got something? Or no? All right. So as we were talking about Steph Curry, we can talk about NBA MVP. Do you think he's going to be the MVP again this year?
Yes.
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 I think he will win the MVP. I think a player to watch is Kawhi Leonard from the Spurs. He's averaging 20 points, 7 boards, and he shoots 48% from 3, which is better than Steph Curry. Obviously, not the volume of threes overall that Steph Curry has. But Kawhi Leonard, a player who made his first All-Star game, I think, this year. I think he's the most valuable player to his team, which I think the award is meant to be, not just the best player on the best team as we've seen. But Kawhi Leonard, he really came out of nowhere, a lot like Steph Curry, Klay Thompson too. But his role on the Spurs is what makes them the great team that they are.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be Steph Curry. He shattered his own record that he made last year in terms of three-pointers. And realistically, every time that he struggles, the team struggles. We've seen their last 2 losses have been, a large part of it is because Steph Curry isn't shooting lights out or being the dominant force that we have seen him. So I mean, the Golden State Warriors would obviously be a very good and still deep team without him, But with him, I mean, they're nearly unstoppable, and it's mainly because of him. So.
I'd agree. I mean, we bring up underdogs who could possibly win the NBA MVP, but one name I do want to toss out there is Russell Westbrook. Kevin Durant coming back from injury last year and missing some games this year. Russell Westbrook has held his own. I mean, this year he's averaging almost 24 points a game. He's averaging over 10 assists a game and just about 8 rebounds a game. And those are some great numbers for a point guard, especially. I mean, that just shows you how powerful and what his presence is on the court with or without Kevin Durant. So as we talk about players, we're going to transition to coaches. Coach of the year, who do you guys have? Any surprising names, or just because I'm going to speak on mine? I'm going to go with Greg Popovich. I think he's done a lot for the San Antonio Spurs. Weird. We have the same last name, so I might as well go for him. But I mean, he's just done a lot with the Spurs. I mean, ever since he's come in, they haven't missed the playoffs since 1998. I mean, that just speaks a lot for the tutelage and what he can do for young players and help them develop into mature veterans. And we've seen it with Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, and Tim Duncan. And then to bring over guys like David West, to bring over guys like LaMarcus Aldridge. I mean, he is just a proven winner, and people want to play with him, whether they're taking smaller contracts or not. They want to be coached under him, and I think he's very deserving of it. Heading into January, their defense wasn't even allowing 90 points a game, and that's incredible for an era where it's all about shooting, especially three-pointers. So I think in March it's kind of slimmed down to about 93 points a game, but still, that's amazing.
I like Kerr, obviously, but he didn't coach for like 40 games, so can you really give it to him? But then you look at their record, and they only have 7 losses, so you could look at him. Greg Popovich also, obviously, as they could close in on 70 wins here. I also like my underdogs. I like Brad Stevens from Boston, who's got Boston in a great place right now with no star player, 1 all-star who maybe, could have been argued that he shouldn't have been an all-star. And then also I like Dwayne Casey for Toronto, because Toronto is also, like, they're closing in on Cleveland, looking to pass them, so they're obviously doing really well too.
My coach of the year is Portland's Terry Stotts. He came with the team losing 4 out of 5 starters from last year. Obviously, they lost LaMarcus Aldridge, but also Nicholas Batum, Wesley Matthews, and Robin Lopez, all to free agency and trading. But Portland has put themselves in about anywhere from a 3 to a 6 seed, depending on what happens here at the end of the season. Damian Lillard, he's a all-star caliber, top-tier player in the league. But C.J. McCollum is the kid to watch.
Yeah, I would give a quick nomination to Brad Stevens, too, even though I know he probably won't win it. I would say he definitely deserves some recognition. He turned Isaiah Thomas into somewhat of a star, and obviously we knew what Isaiah Thomas was, but with Brad Stevens coaching, he turned into somebody who he wasn't previously. Moving on, who do you guys think, or what is the biggest shock in the NBA to you?
I think the biggest shock in the NBA would be the Golden State Warriors at 63-7 right now at this point of the year. I mean, we see a lot of teams in the NBA that have the depth. It's similar to what they have, but they're just on a roll. I mean, out of some of their wins, Steph Curry hasn't played, Klay Thompson. I mean, they're missing key players, but yet their bench just keeps rolling on with them. So I would actually say that. And if they can end up beating the Bulls' 72-10 record set almost 20 years ago, that's phenomenal. That's wonderful to see as a fan of the game.
My biggest surprise in the NBA would be Boston, because you look at their roster, you don't think they would be where they're at, which I think is 5th in the East, tied with Atlanta. Atlanta has the tiebreaker, though. And then also Chicago being a bad surprise, because everybody expected them to be one of the great teams, probably the only team that could give Cleveland a run for their money in the playoffs or the Eastern Conference Finals, and they're down there at the bottom about to lose their playoff position with the Detroit Pistons, who, if you look at their roster, doesn't even look like they should be anything in the NBA, and they're looking to take the Bulls out. So,
my biggest shock would be a tie between the Bulls and the Bucks too, for the same reasons you mentioned. Both disappointing seasons. Everybody I think saw the Bulls as being a lock for a playoff, even like in the top 4 for it, and then the Bucks as well. I mean, you saw a little bit of promise out of them last year. Obviously, I don't think anyone expected them to win that series in the playoffs. But then going into this year, there was a lot of hope about Jabari and Giannis and everything kind of clicking, pulling it together. And we have seen them really step it up. With Giannis at a couple triple doubles, and then Jabari really kind of turning it on of late. But they are a major disappointment this season for sure. So up next, we'll talk about the WMCM sports.
Introducing WMCM's newest sports show, Hot Shot Sports. It's got games, memes, highlights, gifts, and everything else that you'd ever want from a sports show, like everything current from social media and all other sports action. So tune in to Charter Channel 989 and Campus Channel 6 for some Hot Shot Sports.
Do you need better opinions on the biggest sports stories? Then you need Sports Talk Live. They cover all sports all the time. From track and field, to soccer, to football, gymnastics, and just about everything in between. Sports Talk Live is your place for sports. Sports Talk Live, Tuesdays on WMCM-TV.
All right, welcome back. Up next, we're going to be talking about some MLB preseason way too early predictions. Murph, let's shoot it over to you. Who do you think has the chance to make the World Series?
Watch out for the Blue Jays. Lot of talent coming back. Josh Donaldson, the reigning AL MVP. Jose Bautista, obviously. But the pitching staff for the Toronto Blue Jays gives them a great shot in the American League. Obviously, they'll have to go through Kansas City once again. But watch out for the Blue Jays. That's my World Series champ.
I'm definitely going to go with another AL East team, and if you couldn't guess by now, it's going to be the Boston Red Sox. One of the youngest, deepest teams in the MLB. Yes, we know Pablo Sandoval sucks, but we got the Cuban sensation Castillo in center field coming back. He's going to light it up, and then Jackie Bradley Jr. also going to be starting in that left field position. I mean, they have one of the toughest divisions along with the NL Central, but I have the utmost faith because, it's either last place or it's World Series, so it's got to be World Series this year, right?
To be honest, I think the Cubs are going to do it this year. This is the year the Cubs do it for Kyle Pop and the rest of Cub Nation. They're going to do it. It's over. Write it in stone.
All right, I appreciate that, because I was also going to say the Chicago Cubs. If you couldn't have already told, but you just look at the Cubs, what their competition is. The 3 best teams in the majors last year were the St. Louis Cardinals, the Pittsburgh Pirates, and the Chicago Cubs. They came from one division, and they won more than 97 games. That's tough. And for the Cardinals to win 101, they had the help of Jason Hayward and John Lackey. Those two are now with Chicago, who already have not only a deep core of young players, but veterans. You can already add in John Lester, Miguel Montero in there. You're going to have Dexter Fowler, who was there last year, re-signed for a smaller deal this year to come back. And just to add those names to Kyle Schwarber, Jorge Soler, Addison Russell, Chris Bryant, Anthony Rizzo. I mean, the list goes on and on of the players that the Cubs not only have in the majors, but who they have preparing in the minors for when these veterans or these youngsters leave for a bigger, better contract. And I think what Theo Epstein has done in his 4 years as the Chicago Cubs president of baseball operations has just inspired the fans and the people of Chicago. And we're all waiting for that World Series title to come back. Theo Epstein was able to do it with the Boston Red Sox. He ended that drought. Woo! And I believe that he can do the same with the Chicago Cubs. And I mean, I don't think it's that hard to expect. They made the NLCS last year to the Mets. They got swept, but I expect that to change this year.
Do you think being in the most competitive division hurts them in the long run?
I think it makes them a little bit better. I mean, that adds to the competition. And if, Joe Madden, manager of the Cubs, he made shirts this year saying, "Try not to suck." And I mean, these young guys know the pressure they're under, and they understand the circumstances, and they're taking on. I mean, they're welcoming the competition, and so should the fans. But switching over from MLB to the NFL, we're going to briefly talk about NFL free agency. Were there any teams out there that surprised you and really caught your eye about what they did through free agency?
For me, it's my favorite team is the Arizona Cardinals. They went and got Chandler Jones from the Patriots, as well as Evan Mathis, a big new part of their offensive line. I think that gives them, obviously they'll have to go through Carolina once again like they did last year, but beefing up that defense is one way to get to the pass rusher, or get the pass rush going, and get to a guy like Cam Newton.
I mean, I can't say anyone's really wowed me. Nobody. I mean, there are obviously some good pickups, as you just mentioned, but nobody's really came out and made some big statements where, I think it makes them an all-around just better team or a Super Bowl favorite or anything like that. Once again, we see the Packers, just being stagnant in free agency, not doing anything huge. So, as a Packer fan, I'm hoping that changes. Julius Peppers was obviously a great pickup, and that worked out. So, hopefully they could pull some magic like that again. But
I think the Vikings did a really good job in bringing in, re-signing who they wanted to re-sign from their previous last year's roster, and also bringing in offensive line help, which they really, really needed. They got a big guy from Ohio State, played in San Francisco, Alex Boone, who's like 6'8", 315 or something. He's a monster, can play tackle or guard. That'll help him out. Brought in another offensive tackle again this last week, and also it really points to where they're going to be looking in the draft, probably towards a wide receiver instead of a safety or an offensive line, because they've already signed offensive line and safety now in the free agency. Mm-hmm. So I think they're really building a really strong, young, good team.
Oh yeah, Vikings, I mean, you talk about the safety position, they added in Michael Griffin to pair up with Harrison Smith, so that definitely helps. My team's the Raiders, Kelechi Osemele, Bruce Irvin, Sean Smith. Huge additions for a young team to mix in with veterans. I think that's going to help them in the long haul, and I do think they are going to be a playoff team this year. But quickly going to rants. Cal, what do you got?
Well, to start off here, my rant is definitely going to be that Derek Jeter is the most overrated player of the past 25 years. Now, ignore all of this, it doesn't matter. He's not even a top 5 Yankee, so not even 5 best in the organization, but yet he gets this year-long parade, and now he's an ambassador for the U.S. going over to Cuba with President Obama. I don't even want to see a picture of him and President Obama because it's just going to disgust me. Derek Jeter all around wasn't that clutch when we think about it. He didn't hand them the title in 2009, Alex Rodriguez did, and he also benefited from coming into the best organization at the time as a rookie. So that's my 2 cents.
All right, my rant is going to be the New England Patriots. I'm sorry, but it's just unfair. I mean, we talk about a team that consistently makes the playoffs, and what do they do with limited cap space and not even a first-round pick? They trade for Martellus Bennett, who is arguably a top 5 tight end in the league, and they already have the number 1 tight end in the league in Rob Gronkowski. I mean, it's basically unfair, and then they add a young center, Jonathan Cooper, in a trade from the Cardinals, where the Cardinals got Chandler Jones. It's, if they do acquire that key wide receiver, like an Anquan Bolden veteran, for Tom Brady to dish it off to on the outside, I mean, that's a huge gain for that offense and Tom Brady.
I'll do a rant too real quick. Personally, for me, this is the greatest, it's not really a rant, but this is the greatest time in all of basketball. We just saw the WIAA state championships. That was awesome. And here in March Madness and working towards the NBA, enjoy it, go out, have some fun, watch some basketball, and don't worry about doing schoolwork.
Yeah, just forget all the schoolwork. Just go ahead, watch some basketball, watch some sports. It's what it's all about. Anything else you guys want to add briefly, or do you want to do a quick rant? Do you have anything?
Quick rant. I'm going to talk about how LeBron James, and I'm sick of watching him have to carry every team he's on. I love LeBron. I loved him in Cleveland. I loved him when he came to Miami for me to give me some championships to love. And then I loved him when he went back to Cleveland. I don't care where you are. Just quit having to carry your teams find something to do, find some teammates that are going to be able to help you in the playoffs.
Definitely. Well, great talking to you guys. Thank you for tuning in to WMCM Sports Talk Live. We're going to catch you next time.
Bye, everybody. Nice. We are a student-run organization.